In an earlier lesson, you learned how to make a zero happen. By adding opposites, you can make zero happen and make numbers disappear. We're going to use a similar idea to make other numbers disappear, but this time the numbers are multiplied. So we're going to multiply to make a 1 happen. And we'll talk more later about why the 1 is so important. So I want to just start off with the idea of this. Here's the number 4/5. 4 over 5 times something to give me a 1. Now you could sit and guess a bunch of different numbers and try this out and try that out. But realize, if this 5 is going to end up being a 1, it's going to have to reduce some way, somehow. When we reduce fractions, you have to remember that we reduce diagonally. So if there's a 5 here, where else does the other 5 have to go so that I can cross off diagonally? Hopefully you said up top. So I'm looking for what is this magic number that 4/5 times this number gives me 1. The 5 goes here. That way I can cross them off. The 4 is going to have to reduce down to a 1. Well, where does the 4 go so that I can reduce? Hopefully you say underneath. So I want you to notice this was 4/5, and if I multiply it by 5 over 4, the 5's will cancel out and the 4's will cancel out, and I'm left with the number 1. 5, 5, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1. 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 1 is 1. Now notice what happened. I started with the number 4/5. The number I multiplied by was 5 over 4. So let's talk about this. This is the same number, but what did we do with it? We flipped it. The idea of flipping a fraction is called the reciprocal. So this idea of taking a number and making its reciprocal, you are flipping it. You're flipping the numerator and denominator. Now the official definition becomes reciprocal is a number and its reciprocal multiplied will give you 1. How did that happen? Because I crossed off diagonally to get 1. So this becomes our goal. If I want to get a 1, I must multiply by the reciprocal. So that becomes our main trick. I am simply going to multiply by the number's reciprocal. Simple enough. Now the hard part becomes this. Some numbers, it takes a little bit to figure out what the reciprocal is. Let's try this. 1 over 5 times what equals 1? I need a fraction. Well, there's a 5 in the bottom, so where does the other 5 have to go? Or think of it this way, here's 1 over 5. What's the flip of 1 over 5? Hopefully you say 5 over 1. 5 crosses, 5 crosses, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 1 is 1. What about this? 7. The whole number 7 times something equals 1. This is where it changes a little bit. Here's the number 7. I need to multiply it by its reciprocal. So you ask yourself, what is the reciprocal of the number 7? Well, a reciprocal means you take a fraction and flip the value of it. You flip it upside down. But this isn't a fraction. But you can make it a fraction. 7 as a fraction is 7 over 1. Any whole number is the number over 1. So this is 7 over 1. So what's the flip of 7 over 1? Because if I take a number times its reciprocal, I will always get the answer of 1. The flip of 7 over 1 is 1 over 7. 7 crosses off, 7 crosses off, I get a 1 and a 1. 1 times 1, 1, 1 times 1, 1. So the trick now is, can I take a number, find its reciprocal, and then multiply it? What about this? 2 and 2/3 times its reciprocal. equals 1. What a lot of kids do and do incorrectly is this. They will say, oh, 2, and I'm going to take the fraction picture and flip it 3 over 2. That's not correct. In order to have a reciprocal, this thing must be a fraction. One numerator, one denominator. So how do we get that to happen? Oh, this needs to be improper. Okay, change it to improper. 3 times 2 is 6, plus 2 is 8. Oh, this actually, 2 and 2/3 actually is 8/3 times something equals 1. Oh, what's the reciprocal of 8/3? The reciprocal of 8/3 is 3 over 8. The 3's cross off and give me a 1. The 8's cross off and give me a 1. That's about the hardest it can be to get the reciprocal of. Let's try one more. 7 and 2/5 times something equals 1. Now, if you get good at this, you can do this in your head. Convert it and invert it. All right, find its reciprocal. 5 times 7, 35, plus 2 is 37 over 5. So in your head, you're thinking 37 over 5. What's the reciprocal of it? 5 over 37. The 37s would cross off, I get 1. The 5s would cross off, I get 1. So when we need to get a 1 to happen, and it's with multiply, take the number times its reciprocal, the reverse of it, the flip of it, and you will get an answer of 1. This is how to make a number disappear and change it into a 1. I want to add in one more piece with the idea of this reciprocal and multiplying to get a 1. When it's a negative number, we still use our negative rules and we still use our reciprocal rules, and we'll still get a 1. So for instance, let's say I had the fraction negative 2/3, and I'm going to multiply it by its reciprocal in order to get a 1. Now, something you have to think about is this. If this is negative 2/3, whether the negative sign is up top, negative 2/3, or whether it is in the middle, negative 2/3, it's still negative 2/3. So if I want the reciprocal of this, I want the number that when I multiply by negative 2/3, I get an answer of positive 1. The reciprocal idea still works. 3 over 2. Because the 2's will cross off, the 3's will cross off. But now you have to think about your integer rules. If I want negative 2/3 times a number to end up at a positive 1, what does this have to be as well? Hopefully you say that, oh, well, this has to be negative 3 over 2. The 2's cross off, I get a 1. The 3's cross off, I get a 1. A negative times a negative is a positive. So when we deal with the reciprocal, it does not change the sign. If it was negative, it stays negative. If it was positive, it stays positive. The only thing it does is it flips it. Let's try this. Negative 7. What is the reciprocal of negative 7? What do I multiply negative 7 by to get an answer of 1? It's the multiplicative inverse. So I have to make this a fraction first. Negative 7 as a fraction is negative 7 over 1. Okay, this is negative. We know this has to be negative because a negative times a negative is a positive. So what is the flip of negative 7 over 1? Well, the reciprocal would be 1 over 7. If this was negative, guess what? Its reciprocal is also negative. The 7's cross off. I end up with 1's. Negative times negative is a positive 1. Okay. Let me try one more. Negative 3 1/2. What is the reciprocal, or what do I multiply by to get an answer of positive 1? Well, if we do this in our head, 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1. So in our head, this is actually negative 7 over 2. So what is the reciprocal of negative 7 over 2? Do the reciprocal, which would be 2 over 7. If it was negative, its reciprocal is also negative. So this would be negative 2 over 7. The 7s would cross off and get 1s. The 2s would cross off, I would get 1s. Negative times a negative is a positive. So remember, reciprocal only flips the object. It does not change the value of it. So if it was negative, it stays negative. If it was positive, it stays positive.